You're watching Alien Invasion Week on TLC.
Houston, while you're looking at Orion, we're getting a pretty tremendous light show. We're looking at the lightning on the Earth.
On September 15, 1991, American astronauts were transmitting images of Earth from the Space Shuttle Discovery when the camera captured a strange light in our atmosphere. Suddenly, the light appeared to blast into space, seemingly chased by two other lights. NASA dismissed the objects as ice particles that broke off the shuttle. Others call them unidentified flying objects, UFOs. UFOs are as old as ancient Egypt. A 3,000-year-old papyrus from the reign of Thutmose III may be the first account of a UFO.
It was a circle of fire coming in the sky. These things became more numerous. They shone more in the sky than the brightness of the sun. Thereupon these fire circles ascended higher in the sky toward the south. And what happened was ordered by the Pharaoh to be written.
A similar circle of fire appears in the Bible in Ezekiel 1:3. A prophet from the 6th century BC, Ezekiel described,
"A great cloud with brightness round about it, and fire flashing forth continually. And in the midst of the fire gleaming bronze. And from the midst of it came the likeness of 4 living creatures. Now as I look at the living creatures, I see a wheel upon the earth, one for each of the 4 of them, and their rims were full of eyes round about. When the living creatures rose from the earth, the wheels rose."
He talks about a bronze wheel, wheel within wheels, a fire coming down, which could very easily be the corona that is so often described as associated with a disc-shaped craft. He describes seeing the smaller craft come down and land and people coming out.
Later, Ezekiel says, "The Spirit lifted me up."
This may well be similar to many reports we get today of experiencers or contactees being lifted through the air, up a beam of light into the craft.
Nearly 2,000 years after Ezekiel, on the other side of the world, another strange sight appeared in the sky. On September 12, 1271, in Taksakanuchi, Japan, a powerful priest named Najiran is about to be beheaded by a jealous warlord. Suddenly, a moving object appears in the sky. It is shiny and round and blindingly bright. The terrified executioners run for their lives, and the priest is saved by this strange flying object. Throughout medieval Japan, the unexplainable was commonplace. In 1389, 3 round objects of unusual brilliance were seen to join together into one large object in the sky. Then in 1458, the emperor himself was alarmed by the sudden appearance of 5 stars circling the moon. These stars changed colors 3 times, then sped off and vanished. In Kyoto in 1606, samurai warriors spotted a whirling ball of fire resembling a red wheel hovering near their castle. Strange objects likewise darkened the skies of medieval Europe. At the end of the 12th century, William of Newburgh wrote that monks in North Yorkshire, England, saw a flat, round, silvery discus which flew over the abbey and caused utmost terror. French theologian Pierre Boestuau was similarly alarmed by the apparition of December 5th, 1577.
About the sun, many dark clouds appeared, such as we are wont to see during great storms. Out of these clouds have come forth reverberations resembling large, tall, and wide hats, and the earth showed itself yellow and seemed to be covered in hats, which appeared in various colors such as red, blue, green, and most of them black. It is easy for everyone to think of the meaning of this miracle, which is God wants to induce men to amend their lives and make penance. Flying hats coming out of the sky. I mean, it sounds bizarre, and ufologists read this and say, aha, these are, round spacecraft landing, More likely is these are tornadoes or cylindrical clouds. I mean, you can go out on any given day and look at clouds and say, oh, there's a dragon, and there's this, there's that, there's a hat. There's a spacecraft. And some of these things might be illuminated by lightning, backlit by the sun, to cast these sort of eerie shadows on the ground. Let's say you took this really weird-looking cloud that looks kind of like a UFO. 400 or 500 years ago, somebody might think, oh, it's this weird thing. It's a landing craft of some kind. But we would look at it and say, well, it's a cloud that just looks like something we're seeing, but it's just a cloud.
The late 19th century, like medieval Europe, was a time of miracles, of new marvels like the telephone and the automobile. But invention led to fabrication. Thousands of Americans across the country reported seeing an object that did not yet exist, an airship. In April 1897, the Chicago Times-Herald published an account of an airship sighting by Robert Lowen of Evanston, Illinois. The body of the night flyer was about 70 feet in length, of slender proportions and fragile construction. To this body were attached a movable headlight and other lights. That same month, the Chicago Record reported that a great black airship was seen by 10,000 people in Kansas City. The object appeared very swiftly and hovered over the city for 10 minutes. After flashing green, blue, and white lights, it shot off into space. Throughout April, the sightings continued in California, Washington, and Canada. Then the stories and the airships vanished until 6 years later, when the Wright brothers took to the sky at Kitty Hawk and the public's imagination took wing as well.
In the late 19th century is when science fiction really got its start with books by Jules Verne and H.G. Wells, and this was in conjunction with flying experiments, glider experiments. The Wright brothers were tinkering and so on.
Just as the turn of the century ushered in fantasies of flight, mid-century spawned dreams about space.
Consider the 1950s. We have this, a boom in science fiction. The space age is just beginning. It's Cold War anxieties. The Russians are doing this. The Russians are doing that. All this secret stuff. It's not surprising that people started seeing spacecraft. After all, we were building spacecraft by the early 1960s, and so if it's possible to do it, why isn't it certain that it's already happening, at least in somebody's mind?
On June 24th, 1947, unidentified flying objects were finally identified, at least by name. A civilian pilot named Kenneth Arnold was searching for a marine transport plane that had crashed in the Cascade Mountains in Washington. Near Mount Rainier, he saw a blinding flash out the side window, then another. He located the source. 9 gleaming objects flying in 2 parallel rows at fantastic speed. The whole world would remember the way he described them. He said they sort of skip and skim the way a saucer skips over water. Arnold's story of flying saucers alarmed the U.S. Air Force. They believed that during World War II, the Nazis had been testing a new form of aircraft, a turbine-driven saucer device. Plans and even some photos surfaced, including one with a German tank cannon. The saucer itself was never found, and the photo was later judged to be a hoax. But the Air Force worried that if a Nazi saucer did exist, it might have fallen into Russian hands. To investigate the rash of strange sightings, they hired Dr. J. Allen Hynek, a professor of astronomy at Northwestern University in Illinois. At first a skeptic, Hynek discovered that nearly 20% of UFOs could not be explained. Hynek labeled these sightings close encounters and classified them into 3 types. In the first, a UFO is spotted. In the second, Evidence, like landing marks, is left behind. In a close encounter of the third kind, alien creatures are actually seen. For 20 years, Hynek tracked UFOs. The scientific community saw him as an obsessed eccentric. He kept up the search in retirement until his death in 1986, yet found no evidence of alien visitors. But some ufologists believe the Air Force withheld the proof. 1st, 1948. Flying over North Dakota, Second Lieutenant George Gorman spotted a lighted object.
It was about 6 to 8 inches in diameter and round, without fuzz at the edges. It was blinking on and off. As I approached, the light became steady and pulled into a sharp left bank. I dived after it, but I couldn't catch up with the thing.
The shaken pilot told investigators that the object moved as if guided by reason. Air traffic controllers in Fargo confirmed the object's high rate of speed. In the early 60s, official reports of flying saucers plummeted. UFOs would have vanished off our collective radar were it not for pop culture, which picked up the flag and ran. Amusement parks featured space themes, and B-movies kept UFOs flying high. Then, in the middle of a decade of protest, a small band of Americans began to speak out about an incident they claimed was covered up 20 years before.
In 1947 alone, every state of the Union except one reported flying disc-shaped objects in the sky that were performing at unbelievable rates. If you look at Roswell as an isolated incident, you have to ask yourself, what is this spaceship doing in New Mexico? On the face of it as one fact, it makes no sense whatsoever. But you put it in context of the summer of 1947 and you say, oh, I understand, they were all over the place. And they found themselves focusing on New Mexico. And yes, one came down.
In 1947, newspapers had astounded readers with reports of a flying saucer that crashed on a farm near the town of Roswell, New Mexico. But the Air Force quickly refuted the story, stating that the flying saucer was merely a weather balloon.
I am here to discuss the so-called flying saucers. The Air Force interest in this problem has been due to our feeling of an obligation to identify and analyze to the best of our ability anything in the air that may have the possibility of threat or menace to the United States.
In the 1960s, a number of people who were first-hand witnesses to not the crash, but to the subsequent follow-up of the military's involvement and their attempt to stop any information coming out of that area started coming forward. Credible witnesses who actually handled material, saw material, or were part of the actual examination and subsequent, perhaps, disposal of the bodies that were recovered.
The legend of the Roswell saucer and the alien bodies has grown over the years, until now it has become an icon for the supposed government cover-up of the existence of UFOs. Russ Estes is a documentary producer who has studied the Roswell crash.
The incident in Roswell, New Mexico is probably our best possible scenario for alien contact because of the number of witnesses involved, the reports of debris, the type of debris, the amount of cover-up that has most obviously taken place over the years. It keeps drawing us back to Roswell 50 years later saying, you know, this is the one that requires the hardest look.
A native of Roswell, Frankie Rowe remembers her father's account of the crash.
He was so excited he couldn't hardly talk. He told us that they had gotten a call that morning. They thought they were going to go out to a plane crash. And when they got out there, what it actually was the crash of a flying saucer. And he said that when they arrived, there was one little person that was still walking around outside of the craft, and two that they knew were dead because they had already been covered over and wrapped up in what he called body bags. They all knew the sadness. They could feel the sadness that this little person had over losing the companions. And the person told them that they couldn't help in any way. So they had only been there just a few minutes when the military arrived. And after the military got there, they chased them away.
The problem now is that it's half a century old. And we're left with this question as well, how good the memory is, how much is being distorted, how much are we leading their memory? And there's no way to really tell at this point what's totally objective, what's subjective, except the few people who were directly threatened by the military and told that if they divulged what they had heard or what they had seen, their bodies would be found, or their bleached bones would be found decades later under the sands in New Mexico.
Something happened at Roswell. Best guess that we have found was contact by an alien craft. If someone were looking at us, looking for a signal, in 1945, 100 miles from Roswell, a signal was set off. It was called the atomic bomb. After that, the only place in the world where rockets were being launched into space was right outside of Roswell. Atomic testing continued right outside of Roswell. The only nuclear strike base in the world was at Roswell. Beacons, lots of beacons. So consequently, there's the place to look.
According to some locals, the Roswell saucer and the bodies of its alien occupants were taken to a top-secret Air Force base near Groom Lake, Nevada, known only as Area 51. The Air Force has never confirmed the existence of this base, but it's famous nonetheless. Enthusiasts line distant peaks to catch glimpses of unusual aircraft performing UFO-like maneuvers.
A bright object is being spotted right there. Suddenly.
There have been rumors for more than 20 years that the government has acquired either partially destroyed or intact UFOs that have either been captured or given to us through some mechanism. There have been a lot of unusual aeroforms seen, videotaped, photographed in the area that display behavioral characteristics, meaning flight dynamics, which are highly atypical of fixed-wing or rotorcraft. Producing high G maneuvers and sudden shifts in directional attitude that aircraft we know of today cannot duplicate. We don't have any hardware, we don't have any software, we don't have any bodies, so we're left, the question is, it's open for conjecture, speculation, and until something more substantial comes forward, there's not much we can do about it.
Something substantial may have already emerged. In the spring of 1961, Robert Dean saw something unearthly in the sky.
And it was out about 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning on the West Range, and we were out there because Republic or one of the aircraft companies was preparing to launch a radio-controlled drone. Just about 7:30, I believe it was, somebody started pointing over a little farther to the west. We all turned our head. We looked over there and we saw an absolutely beautiful, what I remember as a metallic object, 200 yards away, roughly 100 feet above the ground. And it was sitting there, motionless, silent. But it was so streamlined and so aerodynamically shaped and so beautiful, and it was reflecting the morning sun.
The object made no sound. Neither did the men watching.
We were all standing there with our mouths hanging open. The object began to bob a little more, and then all of a sudden it began to move away. And then, at an incredible rate of speed, it rose and flew out of sight. And then, of course, all of us being in the military, either military or civilian, we were sworn to secrecy. Most of us who were present that day assumed we had seen a high-tech U.S. Air Force or Army piece of technology up there. The fact that we were sworn to secrecy, the fact that we were all debriefed thoroughly, I was not to realize until later what we had really seen that morning. It was a UFO.
The ultimate UFO encounter was played out in the 70s on the movie screen. Though a commercial success, Close Encounters of the Third Kind didn't get us any closer to the truth. Interest in UFOs actually waned, mainly because of the lack of any evidence. Then, about a decade later, a sky full of evidence fell upon us. In 1987, a Swiss farmer named Billy Meyer released dozens of photos he claimed to have taken of UFOs. What's more, Meyer claimed dozens of contacts with extraterrestrials. A research team of UFO enthusiasts from the U.S. visited Meyer and interviewed him.
A person
UFO came out of the disc.
Person came out?
Yeah. And when the person came out of the left side of the trees there, I have seen that it is a woman.
And you sat here and talked to her?
Yeah, then we was talking here for about 1 hour or 1 hour and a quarter, something like that.
Did she give you a name? What did you call her?
Yeah, she told me her name is Semyase.
Semyase?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this case has become intensely tangled up. For one thing, many people tried to figure out how Billy took the pictures, and so they made models of their own. And pictures faked or representations of the saucers were put in Billy's hands and were part of his collection. Investigators would come to the farm, find these pictures among the, quote, valid Billy Meier pictures, walk away with them, do the science, find the string, determine that one Billy Meier picture is a hoax, and hence all of Billy Meier's pictures are a hoax. And this logic doesn't necessarily hold. What you're looking for is the one Billy Meier picture that you can prove is not a hoax. But we can tell you that this photo is of a craft as big as Billy said it was, as far away from the camera as Billy said it was, with no apparent means of aerodynamic support, and of a solid object of some material and not a photographic fake.
The same year Meier was shooting his film, a home builder named Ed Walters captured these images over a span of 6 months in the town of Gulf Breeze near Pensacola, Florida. Dr. Bruce Maccabee, an optical physicist formerly with the Office of Naval Intelligence, has analyzed Ed Walters' photographs and videotape.
The most important thing about Ed's July 21st video is the presence of a shadow of the UFO on the trees, the tree line on the other side of Santa Rosa Sound. And you can see when the UFO comes into the field of view from the left-hand side, moves over towards the right, reverses and goes back off to the left. At the same time the UFO is moving, you can see a darkening, a shadow that moves along the tree line over to the right, stops, and then moves back to the left again. And that is something that I don't think anyone has ever captured on video before.
It's his analysis, and it's been heavily criticized by others in the field because some of it doesn't add up, some of it does add up. They think it was models, and unfortunately models were found in Ed Walters' old house that generically conformed to the shape of some of the vehicles that were photographed. So here we go again with another case that could be, couldn't be, maybe. It seems like there's always some disinformation or misinformation involved, and the further one looks into the case, the more problematic it becomes, and like everything else in ufology, it ends with a big question mark.
It's this big question mark that keeps people searching. Is there any proof at all? Sifting through the legends, listening to the fables, the answer seems as obscure as the source of the Pharaoh's circle of fire. One thing is clear. Over the centuries, thousands of people from every corner of the globe have reported seeing things in the sky we can't explain away. Whether they're real or not, UFOs have become a part of our culture. Surveys indicate a majority of people are inclined to believe in them, even without scientific evidence. As we search for strange objects in the heavens, hoping to find the answers to so many questions, perhaps what we really see is ourselves.
I saw lights following my car, and they came down out of the sky in back of me. The next thing I remember is my car was literally ripped off the side of the road. I felt like I was going to crash, and it, like a giant hand, reached out and literally pulled my car off to the side of the road.
Making Contact, when UFOs and alien encounters returns on TLC.
I don't drink. I don't do drugs. I never did. I don't even take aspirin. Whatever's coming out, whatever I'm remembering clearly. It was very dark, and I saw these 5 little characters, guys, whatever they were. Big heads, big eyes. They were kind of a putty, whitish, grayish color. They were humanoid, 2 legs, 2 arms. They laid me down, and I don't remember having my clothes removed or taking them off, but I didn't have any clothes on. And they did all sorts of experiments to me. When you look into the eyes of these creatures, it changes you forever.
The people you are watching come from various countries around the world. They are of different ages, cultures, religious beliefs, and professions. They all have one thing in common. They believe they've made contact with beings from other worlds. From the dawn of history, mankind has told stories of intelligent, non-human creatures with great powers. Creatures not of this earth. Historians have evidence through writings of Aristotle that the possibility of alien beings was discussed as early as the 5th century BC, making the topic about 2,500 years old. The consideration of alien life took a giant step forward in the 16th century when the world absorbed the discovery by the astronomer Copernicus that the Earth was not the center of the universe. If Earth was just another planet, perhaps other planets were just like Earth. Inspired by this breakthrough in astronomy, British scientist John Wilkins wrote The Discovery of a World in the Moon in 1638. In it, he described an imaginary trip to the moon, which included meeting human-like moon inhabitants. Here in America, 19th century astronomer Percival Lowell insisted that he saw man-made canals on Mars, evidence, he claimed, of intelligent life. Lacking proof that life exists among the stars, mankind has populated outer space with figments of its collective imagination.
It's a common human trait, and probably one of the most basic human traits is the fear of the unknown. So that when we encounter unknown space, whether it be oceans or outer space or deepest, darkest forests, we tend to inhabit those, at least in our mind, with, let's say, monsters or serpents or aliens or these supernatural beings who threaten us. In a sense, it reflects our own fear of these spaces.
The first American report of alien contact is believed to be the account of Colonel H.G. Shaw, detailed in an 1896 edition of the Stockton Evening Mail in California. Colonel Shaw claimed that he and a friend encountered 3 strange beings in the town of Lodi. They were about 7 feet tall, thin and hairless, but they looked like humans. Because they were extremely lightweight and weak, they failed in their attempt to pick up the 2 men and drag them into their airship. The story ends with Colonel Shaw's quote,
"There is no doubt in my mind that these creatures came from Mars and wanted to procure an inhabitant of Earth."
At the same time some men were seeing airships, others were actually trying to build them. Still others were writing fantastic tales of future flight. Jules Verne and H.G. Wells published stories about Martian invasions and undersea adventure, giving birth to a genre later known as science fiction.
A good number of the people who believe that they've been abducted have been influenced in some manner by science fiction. I think science fiction gives them the images to work with. I think that they believe sincerely that they have been abducted. But I don't understand why an alien, again, why would an alien come all this distance?
Encouraged by breakthroughs in science and flight, scientist Hugo Gernsback started the Amazing Stories series of books in the 1920s to spark youth interest in science. He wrote of trips to distant planets, human space heroes, and evil alien beings. Filmmakers quickly embraced this new genre, including a brilliant young artist who would bring aliens right into American living rooms.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's indescribable. I can hardly force myself to keep looking at it. It's so awful. Its eyes are black and they gleam like a serpent. The mouth is a kind of V-shape with saliva dripping from its rimless lips.
In 1938, Orson Welles performed a live radio broadcast of The War of the Worlds. Thousands of Americans panicked when they thought they were hearing an actual news broadcast of a Martian invasion of New Jersey. With Germany on the march in Europe, many blame the reaction on America's fear of invaders closer to home. In the years after the War of the Worlds broadcast, some people claim to have actually seen spaceships and met their inhabitants. They called themselves contactees and claimed that the aliens they met weren't marauding killers from Mars, but peaceful beings trying to save humanity. The most public of the contactees was a mystic named George Adamski. He not only claimed to have been visited by beings he called Space Brothers, he said they actually took him aboard their ship.
I was taken to the mothership and they're flown around, not too close to the moon, but with instruments. Similar, you might say, except it wasn't a camera, it was a regular sort of a telescopic instruments that we were able to see what was on the moon.
In 1952, Adamski showed photographs of scout craft from a Venusian mothership that bore an uncanny resemblance to chicken brooders available by mail order. While most ufologists acknowledge that Adamski either fabricated or garbled large parts of his stories, some believe the essence is true.
It's my belief that something at the core of the Adamski experience is correct. When we see motion picture film taken in Washington in 1965 and in the southeast of the United States in 1970, and still pictures taken in Italy and England and South America of craft essentially identical to what Adamski was talking about, we're forced to conclude that somewhere at the core of it he did have some authentic experience.
Throughout the 1950s, Europe buzzed with reports of UFO sightings and alien encounters, including blonde, human-like aliens spotted in Scandinavia.
Extraordinary beings visiting humans, with these beings having supernatural powers, coming from a distant place. These are the basic themes that you find in most myths.
In December 1954, several men from rural areas of Venezuela claimed to have had nighttime encounters with aliens. These aliens were described as small, hairy-clawed monsters who nearly dragged one victim into their spacecraft before he got away. Many of the stories of alien encounters describe rounded spacecraft with bright lights, yet three distinctive types of aliens emerge from them. The blondes are tall, attractive, and appear Nordic. The grays have smooth, hairless gray skin and look reptilian. Then there are the small, hairy, violent monsters, mostly reported in South America.
We don't know what's out there. We're sure that there's something out there, and so we create entities or beings to fill that space. And then, based on belief in their existence, it's natural then to believe in interaction with those beings.
Throughout the 1950s, around the world, contactees spoke of seeing aliens and meeting aliens. But in the 1960s, the stories took a new twist. On September 19, 1961, Betty and Barney Hill, a couple from Portsmouth, New Hampshire, said they believed they were kidnapped and taken aboard a UFO, that their memories of the entire incident had been wiped from their minds and could only be recalled with hypnosis. The Hill story became the basis for a best-selling book, Interrupted Journey, published in 1966. Believers maintain that the Hills' account inspired other abductees to come forward. Skeptics believe that their story set in motion a train of false reports.
I didn't remember this story until I underwent hypnosis. I saw lights following my car, and they came down out of the sky and back of me, and there was no sound. And it scared me to death. First, I thought it was a helicopter or something. It almost looked like it was going to land on my car, and I speeded up. The next thing I remember is my car was literally ripped off the side of the road. I felt like I was going to crash, and it, like a giant hand, reached out and literally pulled my car off to the side of the road.
Dr. William Cohn is a psychologist and critic of the use of hypnotism to recover memories.
We've known for at least 200 years now that hypnosis is a lousy tool to recover memory. The people that are doing the research believe otherwise. They think that hypnosis is an accurate tool that you can put somebody into a trance, dig into their unconscious, and recover memories accurately. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of research studies say otherwise. So that basically You have people that not understanding the tool they're using, misusing it, and perpetrating a myth on the people that they're working with.
It seemed really obvious while I was on the table that they were really interested in my nervous system and the mechanics of my body, how I actually worked. I was lying on my stomach and I could literally feel a flap, like an incision being made and my back being opened up. I could feel the picking. I don't know whether they were using some sort of a pick or a finger, but I could hear kind of a hard, almost like tapping on wood sort of feeling, and I could feel the vibration in my body. There was no pain. It was very obvious that they were poking at my spinal column. I think they were interested in how I worked, just mechanically.
But some abductees don't need hypnotism to remember their alien encounter. Colette Peters' memories of her abduction experience began when she was very young.
When I was approximately 5 years old, kindergarten age, I had a very unusual experience where I was in my bedroom in the evening after my parents had tucked me into bed, and I had 3 unusual beings that were about 3 feet tall approach the side of my bed, and the next thing I knew is that I was being raised up out of my bed through a beam of light, going through a closed window over the trees in my backyard. And I thought it was a really neat experience because I had the sensation of flying, and I was grabbing the leaves and twigs off the tree on my way up at this beam of light. I found myself standing in a circular room on board a craft that was above me in the sky, and I was holding my father's hand, and there were these taller beings that had sort of gray, chalky white skin. They were about 5 feet tall with large slanted black eyes. And I observed my mother on a table where 2 beings were overlooking her.
Colette Peters' tale of her childhood abduction mirrors the vivid experience of many others. In 1983, to verify these stories, ufologists, led by Bud Hopkins, hired a psychologist to conduct 3 standard personality and psychology tests on 9 of the most credible abductees. Dr. Elizabeth Slater was not told until after making her conclusions about the patient's claims of alien abduction. Her findings included a slightly higher incidence of child sexual abuse. Further,
the group shared underlying emotional factors, including a degree of identity disturbance, some deficits in interpersonal sphere, and generally mild paranoid phenomena.
This study only provided another battleground for skeptics and believers. Skeptics felt this proved that abductees are disturbed individuals who channel their trauma into imagined abductions. Believers concluded that abductees would naturally be more disturbed than the average person.
Something happened to me. Psychiatrists know that for a fact. They're more sure of it than I am. What is it that happened to me that was so extraordinary? Just because I can't prove something happened to me, you can't prove that it didn't. I don't have the answer. I'm more frustrated about it than those people are, whoever those people are. It happened to me. It's not fun. This isn't something I asked for.
Abductions reported to psychologists, journalists, and hypnotists have become so prevalent that some of the more prominent professionals that deal with the phenomena organized the Abduction Study Conference, held at MIT in 1992. One of the organizers was Harvard University psychiatrist Dr. John Mack, who was introduced to alien abduction phenomena in 1990.
John has said on many occasions that when people come into his office, they're completely unpredisposed to believe anything. Well, everyone coming into his office is there because they think they were abducted. The minute they go into his office, they're predisposed. The man is the world's most prominent abduction researcher. Why are they there?
As convincing as the claims made after hypnosis may seem, even if they are false memories, what is the explanation for those memories that are not the result of any hypnotic recovery method? Are they dreams or a real experience?
A tall being, which I'll refer to as the scientist, brought me into a room and showed me rows and rows of these little babies, hybrid babies. They were in very small containers, similar to shoe boxes, and each one, I could tell, looked similar to these beings and also half human. In my own opinion, I don't know why they're doing this. I would think that there are many different sorts of beings out there, and they all have their own agendas.
Current abductee reports usually do not involve a simple kidnapping. Dozens report feeling small nodules beneath their skin, implanted tracking devices. Richard Price, who claimed that he was abducted several times since childhood, claims he discovered such a device implanted in his body. He brought it to Dr. David Pritchard, an MIT physicist and co-organizer of the MIT conference. In 1992, after lengthy, costly testing of the object, Dr. Pritchard concluded that the object was of terrestrial origin. No object has yet been taken from a human that has been certified non-terrestrial.
The aliens are very inconsiderate in their abductions because they traumatize human beings, they hurt human beings, they do horrible things to human beings. How inconsiderate of them. Then why are they so considerate to tuck them back in their beds? That makes no sense to me. If you're coming upon a planet, as we would, and yes, I have to judge them as I judge myself and other humans, and we wanted to check out a human being, we'd take one, and we'd do whatever we want to it.
I remember coming down in the beam of blue light, liking the sensation of flying, and grabbing leaves, waking up in my bed, and my bed was filled with evidence of immature leaves from the top of an 80-foot tree that was in my backyard, the leaves and twigs in my bed, and we could not account for it. I went to call my parents, and they were at first told me it was a dream, but then when they saw the leaves and twigs in the bed, they were baffled and very concerned. Then to me, it seemed very real, like a real experience.
The number of abductees increases and the stories become more extreme. The question arises, why now? Some ufologists believe aliens have been visiting Earth for centuries and that early civilizations mistook them for angels or devils. Others claim that extraterrestrials walked the Earth before humans did. Eric von Daniken's 1971 book, Chariots of the Gods, suggested that ancient pictographs, sculptures, and paintings pointed to visits by extraterrestrials during the early development of humanity. For example, cave drawings in France, South America, and Africa depict men in spacesuit-type attire, including antenna-like spirals on their headgear. Many skeptics believe that so-called witnesses suffer from overactive imaginations, influenced by fictional portrayals of little green men in spacesuits. But what, von Daniken asked, fed the imaginations of ancient people? Where, in ages preceding flight, would they come up with the notion of landing strips? Skeptical historians say that von Daniken and his peers have taken liberties with ancient artwork. But what of the reports from today's abductees?
They describe waking up in their bed, eyes open, not being able to move, watching some beings walk in the room. Maybe they feel a weight on their chest or they feel themselves floated out of the room. That's a classic sleep paralysis episode. Hundreds of people throughout history have had that happen to them. I've had it happen to me 4 or 5 times in my life. It's very real, it's very frightening, and we really don't know what it is. But I don't think it's alien abduction.
Dr. Michael Shermer is a professor of science and technology at Occidental College in California and a founder of Skeptic magazine.
The alien abduction phenomenon and the UFO phenomenon is one of the most interesting to me because it's emblematic of a social movement, what sociologists call a moral panic, what historians call like a witch craze. It's one of these things that starts snowballing, and when it's driven by the mass media, where the information is exchanged very quickly, you see it blossom, all on the flimsiest of evidence.
Modern reaction to the actual reports of alien contact has varied. It includes abject fear, hope for humanity's enlightenment, scientific curiosity, dismissive skepticism, and sheer amusement. While the debate goes on, the scientific community is working quietly to see if there might be life beyond Earth. At the 1996 meeting of the American Astronomical Society in San Antonio, scientists announced the discovery of several planets in distant galaxies that just might have the warm, watery conditions essential for life. Astronomy may be on the verge of discoveries as earth-shattering as those of Copernicus in the 16th century. NASA plans an ambitious 25-year program to search for other planetary systems, especially Earth-like planets that may be habitable.
The search for planets outside our own solar system, and for that matter, planets on which there is life, is a high priority in science and astronomy. There is a natural curiosity on the part of most people who become astronomers in this possibility of other worlds in space. It's in part why people become astronomers. They wonder about these mysteries of the cosmos, and they'd like to know. That curiosity, in fact, propels us to undertake research, to send probes out into space, to build instruments like the Hubble telescope that can see greater detail than we've ever seen before. So this is, in fact, a major theme in modern science, to look for other worlds in space and also to look for life in the universe besides our own.
Will we find other intelligent beings out there? If we do, will we discover that they found us first, as many claim? Or will we be the strange aliens who visit another planet's inhabitants?
Coming up, when it comes to UFOs, what does the government know? And when did it learn the truth? We'll investigate as Alien Invasion Week continues, next on TLC, Adventures for Your Mind.